Good evening and welcome to Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation. My name is Donna Gray Banks and I am your host this evening. Our special guest is jazz guitarist, author, entrepreneur, publisher, consultant, and motivator, Maurice Johnson. His current novel is Dragonfly Summers, A Dream Before Tomorrow. Maurice, thank you for being here. What a wonderful book you have written. I
Thank you.
certainly enjoyed it. I was able to read it over the holiday and yeah, everyone, it is packed full of information, but let's go. So Zoom In on a Fresh Conversation is sponsored by Eyeless Diamonds LLC, the F.R.E.S.H Book Festival, which will be held in the beautiful city of Daytona Beach, 23, 24, 25 February 2023. Mark your calendars. In Florida this year, this is our first year for a Black Artist Series. Friday, July 15th is our last Black Artist Series, and it has been phenomenal. For those of you who did not make it, please try to make it in 2023. The Black Art Talk Series ends with Paul Housel on Friday, July 15th at the Museum of the Arts in DeLand, Florida. If you have any questions for Maurice, please leave them in the chat box. And good evening, Maurice. Please take a moment and give our audience just a brief description about who you are.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Once again, as you stated, my name is Maurice Johnson, and a lot of my history goes back, let's see, my adult history. I've come from the music realm. I'm a jazz guitarist and started a band back in 1985. And I've been playing since started guitar around 1973, 2 or 3, along that line. And became acclimated and became a full-blown jazz guitarist with a band called F.R.E.S.H Jazz. We were fortunate enough to work with a lot of major acts, George Benson, Nancy Wilson, Al Green, a lot of people like that. And we came to a sudden demise, and
no bragging.
Go ahead, Mike.
In 1993. And, things changed after the band broke up. I started working solo a lot. That was very cool. That became a lot of my life. But all the while I have been writing. Much of my writing has been along the music business realm and engaged in various entrepreneurial endeavors and even built guitars for a while. And the instrument that I play to this day for the past 20 plus years is one that we designed and licensed to a manufacturer out of Korea. And today, kind of matriculated to doing a lot of my own self-publishing, although I've been with various publishers. Started self-publishing in around 2017. And lo and behold, people began to ask me for assistance with their own books or a lot of questions. And lo and behold, I started a company called Self-Publish Me, and here I am today.
Now, I don't think I asked a question. I'm looking through here about your first guitar. Did I ask? That's not in here, is it? So let's talk about that really quickly. I think the one that you got was from the street that your uncle found. Is that correct?
Well, very close.
Okay.
My uncle Leon was a garbage collector,
Okay.
and every so often, I guess he'd find some goodies here and there on his route as a garbage collector, garbage collector, however you want to say it. And one day, I was around 15 years old, and one day he came in through the den carrying an armload full of things, and among that was a little toy plastic guitar, just a little, nothing major. And he set it down beside me, and he said, "Honey, here's something y'all can play with." And I picked up that toy guitar, plastic, and it had about 3 strings on it. But I was intrigued. And from that point, I would pluck around on that thing and try to familiarize myself with it. But it did something.
I'm sorry. I hear a lot of noises, and I feel like it's disrespectful because he's trying.
What noise are you hearing? Is he hearing? Okay, go ahead. I don't know.
Was it my background?
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, yes, it was a plastic guitar, and I kind of played around with that for a little while. And a few months later, my big brother returned from Vietnam. It was around 71 or so. And lo and behold, among some of the things that he had as he began to unpack was an electric guitar. And he saw my interest and fascination by it. And eventually he bought my first guitar, made arrangements for me to buy my first guitar, and life began as a guitarist.
Yeah, I thought that was very poignant because most people think that people get started. I don't know what that is, but hold on one second. So sometimes, people think that people start being consummate musicians with, silver spoons in their mouths. And that's not normally what really happens. It happens just like you said, a guitar, plastic with 3 strings, and you becoming enamored with it and doing the best that you can and becoming a consummate musician. So anyway, I just wanted everybody to know that that background to your being a musician. And before we get into Dragonfly Summers, you are a novelist of 1, 2, 3, how many? 7 other books?
Well, one's a book of quotes, and the other one's music business. Another one is a system for musicians. And the one before Dragonfly Summers is The Power of Trying. It's more about motivation. That's something that's been within me. I've always been a motivated person, and I felt I've always been a motivator to many people. So I thought it was appropriate to write that.
And you were with a standard publisher before, is that correct?
With a few publishers, yes.
And so when you made that transition to self-publishing, how hard was that?
It wasn't difficult at all. The only challenge, by virtue of the fact that I was always an artist and a graphic artist. So all I had to do was make the transition and gain and knowledge on how to format a book. And when I create my graphics, I now have to design it anticipating that it will be accompanied by some featured text.
Okay.
Not just willy-nilly throwing a bunch of graphics up there and thus designing book covers. So it came relatively easy for me. I found myself, my daughter is also, she's an author, but among many things, but she has over 30 books. And lo and behold, before I really got into the self-publishing aspect of things, because I was published by traditional publishers, she began to ask me if I would help her design her book covers. So, and she kept me quite busy designing these book covers. This is long before I, engaged with myself as a self-published author or constituted self-published me. So that kind of gave me, because of my daughter, she really gave me hands-on experience, so to speak. So it motivated me to get out there and try it on my own.
So we're gonna now talk about Dragonfly Summers, which I really enjoyed, A Dream Before Tomorrow. So it's a historical roller coaster. Tell the audience how you became interested in finding out your ancestry.
Well, I'll tell you the story beginning this particular book. Before I even knew it was a book, before I even knew I was writing an autobiography, so to speak, happened as early as 2006, believe it or not. I started writing from emotion. I always had the shadow of my history, of my past. It's somewhere in the back of my mind that I imagine, as many of us do. I remember various locations and all kinds of things, but I was curious and I wanted to start penning things down and just putting it down on paper. But and I laid it to the side for many years. I didn't really get serious about it, and I didn't have a direction. But one day in 2009, my Uncle Charles visited me in my living room. We were talking, and he began to tell me about his grandmother, who was my great grandmother. And he shared with me that she was a slave. And the profound thing that he remembered about her, he remembered the scars on her wrist and on her ankles, the whip marks on her arms and on her back. He said they used to take care of her and bathe her and everything. And that was really a profound revelation for me. And it really made me want to know more, because all these years I've been ignorant about my ancestry, only knowing a handful of cousins and immediate, first and maybe a second cousin here and there, but I never heard the story about my great grandmother. So it intrigued me to the point of I started it in 2013, 4 years later, I started an ancestry account, and I really started digging into things, and I started learning some things that I just didn't know, and unraveling this ball of twine. And then something, was moving me just to pick up my writing again, because I had already established a general foundation. And then I had some focus to build upon. I said, well, let me make this more, I want to write something so my grandchildren and great grandchildren won't be ignorant of their, and when I say ignorant, I'm just mean in the sense
Just
of,
not knowledgeable.
not
Yeah.
knowledgeable about their
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm still here on this earth, and I want to be able to convey what I know. Although it's through the eyes of myself, young Timmy Johnson, but still, as you said, descriptions, I wanted to describe geographic locations and proximities and people's names and here and there, all the connection, so they would fully understand. They could literally take that book to the little town I grew up in and follow it and follow my path as a child back in 1964.
I want the audience to know that this has very little dialogue, but it is so well written that you don't understand that it has very little dialogue until it's all over. And you thought, well, nobody talked in this book. Right? So it's really very well done. You were raised between Wisconsin and Oklahoma. Now, those of us who were kind of born and raised below the Mason-Dixon, we don't believe that slavery happened in Wisconsin. You know what I mean? It doesn't even dawn on us that it happened above the Mason-Dixon. And so when you were raised between Wisconsin and Oklahoma, talk about being plucked from your home in Wisconsin as a young man after the death of your mother, and you went to live in Oklahoma, and how different the areas were.
Well, it was profoundly different. But yes, my mother died in 1964, and that's when life changed terrifically, as you can imagine. It was 6 of us. Our father, or the father I knew, had some problems, and he couldn't take care of 6 children on his own there in Milwaukee. So it was determined that we decided that we come to Oklahoma to live with our grandmother, and she was 69 years old at the time when we arrived. It was 6 of us. But yes, there certainly was a profound difference between Milwaukee and Reno, Oklahoma. We went from paved roads to indoor toilets to dirt roads and outhouses. It was like being literally like stepping back in time. Literally, you start your life at the starting point, and you make this move, and now you've been moved back to the starting point, and your life begins from there.
I didn't ask you this, and now I'm thinking of all the questions I wanted to ask you. I'll probably run out of time. So tell us about that train ride.
Well, the train ride was really something. I remember.
And you were 4, 5?
I'm sorry, 5.
5. I
was 5 years old.
Okay.
So yeah, I remember downtown Milwaukee. My mother and I sometimes would go downtown and ride on the trolley. But the train was that's how we came to obviously to Oklahoma, some 900 miles away, and it was quite a different experience as we piled up in the train, and I really try to take the reader there. I let them see what
absolutely, yeah.
So I let them. I want them to hear the squelch and squeal of the brakes and smell the diesel fuel or the tart chemical smell of the treat what do you call it? Railroad ties.
Railroad ties.
You ever smelled that? That's a treatment. So I really wanted to put them there, and at the graduating light of day as it came to a demise, and now we're riding in the dark. So I researched a lot of that. I found myself pulling up train sounds. As a matter of fact, when I wrote that scene, I looked on YouTube, and I found just train sounds.
Yeah.
You can hear train sounds, the interior of a train, the exterior of a train. It just goes for about a few hours. And I have my headphones on and I'm riding, and it literally put me there. I hear the whistles, I hear all this, I hear the rumble of the wheels along the tracks. And it's my job as a writer to convey that to the reader. I have to think that like the reader is blind, and I have to, really describe it to them. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So I used a lot of resources in that instance to put myself in that picture.
I'm just amazed at what you remembered at 5. Sitting on someone's lap in the cab,
Yes.
And making that trip to the railroad. I don't think I remember most of that. So it's really amazing that you can pull that from way back when and be so accurate in your writing. So in the book, you say that you received God's gift of empowerment from your mother. You want to expound on that for a little bit?
Well, my mother was a very religious woman, and life was difficult back then, in the early 60s and late 50s, even before I was born. But one day I remember, because one of my go-to places was under the porch. We had about a 4-foot porch, and I'm just a little kid, and there was an opening in the lattice, and I would hang out there, and everybody knew where I was. I'd stay close to the house. And a lot of times I'd come up the stairs and run through the living room or what have you. And one day I remember coming up the stairs and coming into the living room, and my mother was she was just standing there, but she had this peculiar look on her face. But I'm this kid, happy-go-lucky and everything. And she looked down at me and she said, and I remember the exact words she said, because they called me Timmy. And she says, "Timmy, God has a gift for you." And I remember that. So I went on running and playing, but I remember that all through my life. And I felt my interpretation of that gift, although through a child's eyes, I was always, at first I'm thinking, I'm going to get a present. What is this gift? What is it?
What is this, right?
But I think what it was, that statement that my mother made to me was truly a gift of empowerment, because that's what she would leave behind because shortly thereafter she was gone. So she left with me just by speaking those words. It empowered me to pursue various challenges in life. It empowered for me not to be afraid to engage in various endeavors. It empowered me not to be afraid to ask questions or explore or go beyond what has already seemingly been constituted to us as our boundaries in public, our public boundaries. So that's what that statement was for me, or that gift was a gift of empowerment.
So you found some very dynamic parallels in your life with historical facts. One, that you were born on the day that the Civil Rights Act was signed, right? Is that correct? Yeah. Yes. So when did you find that out? I mean, in your research, or when did you just, did you know all along?
Well,
not really.
I will tell you this, because it has been a historic thing. A lot of the things from history began to solidify, because now as an adult, I was listening. As a kid, I could have cared less. They
Right.
rattle off all this stuff and all this,
Right.
and yeah, let me get out of here. We'll go to recess. But now it really means something, because it ties in with my life. And in recent, as I was writing this, I put it together. July 2nd, 1964, it happened on my birthday. Wow. And I made that particular, that equation. So I thought that was very interesting to notice that, although it's
Right.
been that way all along.
Right. Happy belated birthday, by the way.
Thank you so much.
So when you decided to go down this ancestral rabbit hole, right? When you were finding out so many painful things, did you ever think to turn back and not do it?
Oh, no, not at all. Because I just wanted to know, yes, things were painful, but I'm a grown man now. And I think all of us carry something. I don't want to call it baggage, but if we perceive it as such, if it weighs upon us and we don't do anything about it or escape from it, yes, it's going to be baggage, because you're going to carry it around. This book helped kind of free me in this.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It enlightened me to many things that I just didn't know before, but it didn't hurt me. I found it very refreshing to learn things. And I am now, it put me in a place where I can share that with my lineage. I can share that with my grandbabies and great grandbabies and family who hasn't even paid attention to those things. So yeah, it's quite the opposite for me.
Well, let me say that there's dragonflies all around. right, because I live in Florida. But I just thought I gotta start noticing what they do and what they're about. Because basically you just think they're irritating, right? They fly in your garage and they fly out. But I'm sure there's a real purpose behind their uh, part in the ecosystem. I need to look that up. So you had older statesmen and women who embedded serious knowledge in your life. Talk about just a few, Mrs. Nelson and maybe Mr. Leroy.
Well, Mrs. Nelson and Mr. Leroy. Miss Nelson was the blind lady that lived right behind, right next door to my grandmother's house. My grandmother lived on the corner. So behind my grandmother's house and right next door is kind of the same thing. So she, so
Right.
she was blind, and I went as a kid, 5 and 6 years old. I'd spend my time with Miss Nelson. When I discovered I'd never seen a blind woman before, and I observed her as she walked out holding onto this line, which happened to be her guideline slash clothesline that extended from her porch. And as she walked, she would walk down the porch and dispersing this chicken feed and looking straight forward, never looking down at her feet. But because being a blind person, you never have to do that. But it struck me. But I used to spend a lot of time working, helping Miss Nelson and sitting on her back porch and just asking her all kinds of curious questions. Now, I can't say what questions she answered for me from the perspective of a 5-year-old.
Right.
I was just there. And I think in a way, Miss Nelson obviously had a fondness for me and maybe in her heart wished that I was her grandchild. But as with a lot of the older ladies and having this little kid. But Mr. Leroy was her son. But, you know, I have to say where I received some empowerment, so to speak, I'd have to say from my Aunt Juanita.
Okay.
I mean,
Right. And Juanita. All right.
my Aunt Juanita instilled in me, and she would always say, whatever you choose to be in life or do in life, strive to be the best. And I live by that. I don't look at life as a competition, but certain aspects of life can be a race, and you want to kind of stay ahead of the game if you can, stay on top of things, and outdo my own self. Everything that I engage in, like if I do another book, I want to do better than I did the last one, so forth and so on. Another thing she'd say is, in all your gettings, get an understanding. That's why it's very important for us not to be closed mouth. It's very important for us to ask questions.
A closed mouth does not get fed.
Thank you.
It does not. Tell me, and I didn't quite, maybe I missed it. I didn't understand the reason why you were put in foster care.
Okay, so
Did you say that in the book, or did I just miss it?
you didn't miss it.
Okay.
I didn't. It was a
You didn't expound on it.
I didn't expound it, and I did that deliberately.
Okay.
Because when we were separated in 1967 from our grandmother, we kept us for the first 3 years, and the state founded decided that she was too old to take care of us. Now being 71 along that time.
Right.
And so we were dispersed or separated by twos, and it was my sister and I. We were the youngest. I was the youngest. My sister was next. My 2 middle brothers. So the pairs of us, my sister and I went to my Aunt Juanita and Uncle Leon. My 2 middle brothers went to another aunt and uncle, and subsequently they began to live a rather
industrious life.
Yeah, industrious life. I don't know why the word escapes my mind. They travel about.
Yeah.
An itinerant life, nomadic life, that kind of thing, in and out of various institutions, what have you.
Right.
But my sister and I, over time, unfortunately, now it was arranged with the courts that whatever the case, we had to stay together. If something happens to one, both of us have to. And I think it was wonderful of them, thoughtful of them, to want to keep us together. Yes, I think from that perspective. But there are situations that happen, and I put it this way: that was my sister's story to tell, not mine.
Okay.
Now, by virtue of the fact my sister went through some hard times, on that first round, we were sent to an orphanage called Whitaker State Children's Home. Now, I had to be there too. I had no problem with that whatsoever because that was my sister. And I think we all would feel that way about our sister, our siblings. I think we've heard the saying, or there's a statue somewhere, he ain't heavy, he's my brother. You know, that
Right.
kind of.
Right. Exactly.
And when you don't have family, or the definition of family has been challenged so profoundly, you moving here and there. You don't have a mother, you don't have your father's here or wherever. I never knew my father, but yeah. So that was my sister's story to tell. But I just ended up being with her during that time. My tenure outside of being kind of moved about didn't last very long before I came back to El Reno.
And you were with your brother, is that
I was with
correct?
my aunt.
You were with your aunt, okay.
I was living with my aunt after leaving my grandmother, and my sister and I ended up in the
Your
North.
brother came to get you.
Yes, my brother. Yeah, my older brother.
He did come to get you, okay.
He get us and bring us home. Yes.
So tell us about Bruton Park.
It's called Burton Park.
Burton.
And it was by a young man by the name of Roy Edward Burton. Roy Edward Burton was born in a little town, I can't remember the year, in Oklahoma, not too awfully far from El Reno. And in his early life, his family moved. I'm sorry, but
That's no problem. Listen, that's life. There's a dog.
His family moved to El Reno, where we were in the early days, many years ago. And at age 16, he wanted to listen to the military. But it's, you know, obviously, as with any family, they didn't want that to happen. But they unwillingly signed anyway. So he went into the Navy. And he was on a ship in somewhere in Japan. And lo and behold, the ship got bombed. And this is World War II. The ship got bombed. And he dived off the ship to save some of his fellow mates. And he did that about 3 times. And one final dive, he never came up. So, and the thing about that, the profound thing about that, he became the first. I might have to take my dog down just a minute.
There's no problem.
He became the first Black casualty of World War II in El Reno. So, in 1945, the park that is now Burton Park was once called Dunbar Park. And a local attorney and another group made arrangements and had the name changed to Burton Park in his honor. Edward Roy Burton. You can actually find him online and everything.
That's right. You want me to stop it? Hold on. So you spent a lot of time there at that park.
Yeah.
Was it very close to the house? I didn't get the proximity. Okay.
It was very close. It was just down the street. It was a block. And I know I say a block, you know, today at 63, a block can be like long, man. We got to walk a whole block.
Yeah.
A block is nothing. You know, we walk barefooted down the street, right down the street from Grandma's house on North Ellison Avenue, just right down there. So we spent a lot of time at the park. That was at Burton Park. We really enjoyed that.
When I saw the original cover of the book, I saw that you asked for kind of some audience participation to see who liked the colors and whatnot. Tell me about the cover and how it was designed, because it's wonderful. First of all, did you design it yourself or you did? Okay.
Well, it's a composite image, and initially it started with a photograph. Let me put it out here. Started with a photograph with the sky breaking through, and it actually trailed down further.
Right.
Trailed down a little further. But as a graphic artist, and the title of it being A Dream Before Tomorrow, and I'll explain that. So obviously I made a little room, making it dark so I could put the subtitle in, things like that. I also put an overlay of dragonflies, the colors of dragonflies. So that's added, and there's a few other things that's added to kind of give it that look, to finish it up. But the title and the way the title correlates with the cover.
Now mine is different.
Yours is different.
Mine has more color.
Yeah, is that a hardcover?
No, it has colored dragonflies.
Yeah, they're color. I mean,
Oh, okay. It's hard to
something
see.
that I've been
Okay.
handling.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
those ghettos. It's a
It's okay.
this is my experimental one right
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Yeah, it's but yeah, it's got colors that deal with my oil and everything on them. But a Dragonfly Summers, a dream before tomorrow. And I always, to me, as an artist, my motto is a picture says 1,000 words. We've said that, right? We've heard that before. So Dragonfly to me implies uh, innocent days
yeah.
uh, tied to childhood. It might mean something else to somebody else, but when I think of a Dragonfly summer, I think of a carefree summer. I think of a child. And a dream before tomorrow, what that implies is, when we were children, we'd have those innocent childhood dreams. And many of us, we could fly around the room, we could do this and that, as children. And it basically implies when I was in Milwaukee having my childhood dreams, one day, or one night I got tapped on the shoulder and they say, Timmy, wake up. Mama's in the hospital. And that's when my childhood dreams ended. So that's the significance of a dream before tomorrow, because tomorrow everything changed. That's when
Yeah.
life changed.
Yeah, she died suddenly. And I don't know which is worse, whether to have your parents, have long illnesses or to die suddenly. They're both very devastating. So let's talk about the publishing experience. So you said you published your own book. With all the problems with getting paper and the pipeline to certain things about the cover and all that. Did you have any problems in your publishing experience? Because they're telling me now that the paper is hard to find, and someone to do the actual binding is hard to find. So did you run into any of those problems?
Actually, no, I can't say.
Okay.
When you say paper is hard to find, back when we were building guitars with the decimation of F.R.E.S.H and everything, we had some very expensive woods, curly maple, tiger stripe maple, all kinds of things. And yes, we could really see the profound impact on that in the price. But with printing, because the platform I'm using and many self-published authors are using these days is print on demand.
Okay.
And now it might impact us from the standpoint of now a 332-page book at 8.5 by 8.5 by 5.5 size might cost a little more to produce than it did a year ago or 2 years ago.
Right.
So I didn't really feel the sting of that at all, nor did I have issues with, the cover or whatever other question you asked. So
who edited that book? Because I didn't see anything, and that's rare.
all right.
Yeah, everybody knows that's rare, right?
Well,
I think Michelle Obama's book had a couple of typos.
So, that's good to hear. I have that book.
Yeah, so who is your editor? Because it was very well edited.
My editor is Karen Redlack out of Las Vegas. And to be honest, because my history, my audience on, let's say, on social media and everything for the past 20 years maybe, have been music oriented.
Right.
Music fans. And lo and behold, I think when I was doing this book right here, Build and Manage Your Music Career. And this was 200 something pages. She, for whatever reason, stepped forward and asked and volunteered and said, I'd be happy to edit that book for you. And that's how we started a relationship. And lo and behold, she became my go-to editor for all of my clients thus far.
Wow.
So we have a working relationship in that capacity.
Yeah, she did a very good job. She did a very good job.
So,
So is there anything else that I don't want to give away? I think I gave away too much already, but is there anything else you want to discuss about the book to our audience?
I think because of the general nature, because we all have a history. We all had a childhood, whether it was good or bad, but we have the ebb and flow of life. And yes, you have to have the contrast of good and bad. And if we come out on top, and that's the objective, is to come out on top. But I think I said it earlier in our interview here, I think we said it before we started the interview, is of all the books I've written and been with, some major publishers and this and that, this particular book feels like my first real book. It's really weird. It's a strange thing. And the reason why is because when I was doing this book or all of my technical books, I was speaking to a very limited audience. My general public is not interested in the book about, a music business or some software that I've developed, or they could care less about that. They might be interested, it makes for a conversation, but not a book to read. But this one, when we share our own life stories, everybody has their stories, and a lot of the historic parallels that we speak of, a lot of us can relate. Unique thing about it, I find when you've read it, and you see some of the historic parallels, they relate to life as a young Black male.
Right.
That life in the bottoms of Reno, Oklahoma. And I didn't, there were some times we all had hard times, but I didn't write it with animosity in my heart. I just wrote it to convey what was happening in the day. And a lot of my friends who are none of my ethnic descent seem to appreciate it. And it seems to enlighten them as well.
And there's other things I found that, everybody has a bottom, and I didn't know that, right? When you're born and raised in certain parts of the country. And now I'm finding out there's bottoms in Florida, there's bottoms in, everybody has a bottom, right? And so I was just very surprised that there was a bottom in, in that area. So tell us how to get a copy of your novel.
Okay, well, it's available on Amazon, first and foremost, and as an ebook, paperback, and hardback. I'm still making it on Amazon. It's also available on Barnes & Noble as paperback and a hardback with a dust jacket.
Okay.
And also you can purchase it on my website at mauricejohnson.org. The signed copies, and use it as a pass-through as well. But so it's available at those locations for now. I will be introducing it in an ebook form for Barnes & Noble Nook, iBooks, and Google Play. But I haven't gotten around to that yet.
Well, listen, all that takes time and work. Anybody have any questions for Maurice before we go? Janice, that's your neck of the woods over there.
Yeah, close to Arkansas, right next door to Northwest Arkansas. I really enjoyed your presentation. Very good. I want to read the book. I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Wonderful.
So, okay, so that's it, Maurice. Thank you so much. We could have given more detail about this book, but it was so intricate in its makeup and design. I did not want to give away the richness of its historical perspective and the many secrets that families refuse to talk about. And we as, I don't know if it's for all people, but we as African Americans really know how to keep secrets.
Yes.
And those secrets are sometimes detrimental to the growth of people and families, right? But to write about it and to get it out of your proverbial system is really cathartic. So Maurice, I take my hat off to you for doing it. Thank you for being here this evening. Reach out to him to get a copy of Dragonfly Summers, A Dream Before Tomorrow. It is, well, for me, it's a 2-day beach read. I really enjoyed it as we sat on the beach. And thank you, Maurice, for giving me that opportunity. Thank you guys for being with me every Monday night. I certainly appreciate it on Zoom in on a fresh conversation. And thank you. Yes, please.
If you happen to purchase my book and if you like it, please leave a review. I really appreciate that.
Please leave a review. Yes, I will do that. Where do you want it? On Amazon? Where do you want it?
Amazon, yeah, or anywhere you
I will certainly do that. I'll do that before I go to bed this evening.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
Good night.